public comment on non-agenda items. We will now open the floor for the public comment on this position. For this portion is for comments on items not scheduled for public hearing this evening. Speakers are asked to state their name and address on the record. Anybody wishing to speak? Okay. Not seeing any, no further, no public comment, we'll close that. Public hearing for rezoning. We will now open the public hearing for rezoning request for RZ 02-2026 at 6:01. Staff presentation.
RZ 02-2026 rezoning 63.34 acres on the North Outer Road. Applicant and property owner is Owl Creek RV LLC, Adam Couch and Joe Wimberly. Zoning request is a change from regional business, which is currently in Lafayette County. So this is contingent upon the annexation. So they had the public hearing at the last Board of Aldermen meeting. They will vote on that on Monday. So this is contingent upon that.
So we are gonna annex, right?
They haven't voted on that yet. That will be voted on Monday, but we're gonna have a public hearing. Attachments include the application, location map, and code of ordinance for R1. We've published that in the newspaper, sent letters to the neighbors within 185 feet and posted our sign at City Hall. Again, the meeting will be on Monday, February 23rd for annexation and for the rezoning. And staff recommends approval of the rezoning request from regional business to R1.
Any discussion? Not, I'll take a motion.
I just had a quick question. On that right there on the outer road, was that zoned commercial or anything?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just wondering like what that was zoned right there next to it.
It's technically still in the county, so I don't know.
I know we had some. Something down there.
What about the 1.5 acre next to it?
Well, wasn't there something zoned down that way?
Yeah, it's on down.
It's in the city limits for the zone.
I was
North side.
Yeah,
It's on the map.
Oh, past whose road?
yeah, I guess.
I'll look it up while we're continuing that public hearing, and I'll let you know during the discussion here.
Are the applicants present? Okay. Any public comment here?
Yes, I have a question.
Uh-huh.
Do you know what their proposed land usage is with the property? I mean, why they're rezoning it to R1? The other reason I ask, I represent the clients that own property next door. And they're looking to sell their property, and one of the big draws for it is that it can be possibly zoned commercial, right? So would there be any confliction with R1 zoning, residential zoning next to a light commercial or even heavy commercial property?
One moment.
Yeah.
Because that, I mean, that would severely decrease the value of my client's property. If they wouldn't be able to upzone their property to possibly commercial in the future. And that's what I'm marketing the property as right now, is it's zoned rural estates. However, if there's a single family development backing up to it, would that affect our possibilities? Or what kind of stratifications would they face or any future developer face to be backed up to as a zoned property like that? Does it make
Is
sense?
the street in the city limits or outside the city?
Technically, it's outside the city limits, but we've been in talk with the city of Odessa that possibly annex into the city limits. for
And
that.
yours is currently zoned rural estates?
Correct. It's just that the draw to this property is it has so much frontage along I-70 on Outer Road.
I was being.
So
You can kind of, let me see if you can see on the map there. So the property that, this gentleman represents is the Ford's property that runs along the
West side of.
west side of the property. So it would only be adjacent to the property on that north line. So the way that our comprehensive plan would work is that we see that everything along that north outer road as commercial property in the future. So the reason why staff supports this rezone would be because there's very minimal frontage along the north outer road. And in reality, this is the back frontage or, back area of that frontage. So we do see commercial frontage and we would see that property also as commercial frontage along the north outer road. But then we would see the ability for residential in the back.
Wouldn't that be a buffer between the commercial and the residential though? Like now you have to, you can't just put commercial up against residential. Should have to be buffer, part of the duplex is something.
Right,
Yeah.
we would work through that on a, scenario based parcel by parcel situation to see what kind of barriers we could put into play if there were a commercial property that were to go in next to residential.
Could that be a case where a PUD was coming at a later date?
Yes.
This is just the frontage.
Yep, and the Ford's property would be a great candidate for a PUD because you could do a mixed use development for commercial frontage with residential in the rear, so.
Yeah, the way the property falls, there's
I
a
don't think it was.
creek that runs through the middle, right? So we ideally subdivide into two parcels, commercial on the front, residential on the back. The issue is that the residential on the back it's completely surrounded by flood zone. So there would have to be some sort of bridge put in on that, I can't remember the gravel road that is right there. But it's across from the wastewater plant.
Huge road.
Yeah, huge road. I mean, it'd be ideal for residential development out there, because it's gonna duck off the highway and be quiet, but it's just. My fear is that, I just don't want this to put my clients in a predicament because. If there becomes some sort of rule that, we need to have some sort of buffering between an R1 zoning, the residential zoning and commercial. That's what our suitor is looking to do. It really bungles up the value of their property. Does that make sense?
Well, if he stayed in the county and what we're annexing this state goes to the city, would that make any difference if let's say annex what he's talking about? Like that with buffer would make any difference if he stayed county and we stayed with the city?
No, it wouldn't,
Okay.
no, because we could, if their property stayed in the county, we couldn't then inflict barrier requirements on their county property.
That's gonna hurt this property value here if he can go commercial right up next to it. I mean, I ain't trying to be a devil's advocate, but that's true.
Sure.
And it's all very scenario based, we can't really predict
Can't
what
predict
the future holds, but I personally think that along that entire area, residential in the rear of these properties makes a lot of sense.
So is that what they're discussing is,
So,
Yeah, they're looking.
single family
okay,
development.
okay, perfect.
Any other comment for the public hearing, either for or against?
Okay, and we'll go ahead and close the public hearing at 6:09. Okay. Uh, Discussion for rezoning of. That's what we just did. Okay, new business, rezoning.
To be on 6.
That's what I'm on.
Okay.
Is there any discussion on rezoning request for R7022026 from the commission? We talked about it.
So I was gonna look up that zoning question. For Seth.
So the area to the west of Hughes Road is C3 Highway Commercial District, closest to the outer road there. And then the rear is actually I2 Light Industrial.
This one.
Mhm.
Okay, I'll take a motion. We got no more discussion. Does somebody like to make a motion regarding rezoning of RZ 022026?
I'll make the motion to accept the RZO 2026 rezoning to R1 of the 63.34 plus or minus acres along the North Bower Road.
I'll say that.
Okay, all in favor? Do we need to do a roll call vote on this?
I think so.
So Steve,
Yes.
here's Seth.
Yep.
Yes.
Yes. Sorry.
Oh, no, it's fine. I was saying yes for me. I confused it. Bill.
Yes.
And David.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Okay, next, we are opening up public hearing for rezoning request for R7032026 at 6:13. Staff presentation.
Okay, this is RZ 03 2026. Rezoning request for 1.45 plus or minus acres at 411 North First Street. Applicant and property owner is Northic Properties LLC, Ken Northic, who is here tonight. Zoning request is currently I1 light industrial, and they're proposing a change to C3 highway commercial. I've included the application, location map, code of ordinance for I1 and C3. This was also published in the paper on January 29th. Letters were sent to property owners within 185 feet, and sign was posted at City Hall. This will go before the board on Monday as well. And staff recommends approval of the rezoning request from I1 to C3.
All right, are the applicants present? Yes. Would you like to speak?
I think it's pretty self-evident, but we wanted to be here to answer any questions,
Okay,
if there were any questions. There was one property prior to our purchase, and so I'm assuming it was zoned in, one way then, and when we bought it, it was broken in half. We just want to put back to the one property. It's all within inside one fence. Be happy to answer any questions.
okay. Anybody else would like to speak?
Is it gonna be a lumber yard?
Try to.
Hopefully,
Yes, sir.
hopefully, good.
No other comments? We can go ahead and close the public hearing at 6:15. Would anybody, any further discussion on any other questions from the board here? If not, I'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve moving from light industrial to C3.
And a second,
I'll second.
all right, all in favor? Let's see, Matt? No, he's not.
Yes.
Steve, yes. Beth,
Yes.
I'm a yes. Bill?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Okay, motion.
Fine.
Action of storage.
Okay, so at our last Board of Aldermen meeting, we had a light discussion about storage units or storage containers. So this was brought up by the police department and code enforcement. We get quite a few complaints. I don't know if any of you have experienced or have any storage containers or know of any storage containers that are stored in your neighborhood or see them from commercial properties, but our ordinance currently doesn't cover how these should be managed from a code enforcement standpoint. So it just, I probably should have put what our current ordinance says in the agenda packet. But what our current ordinance says is that they cannot be in residential. That's all that says. So, we wanted to create a little bit more of an elaborate ordinance and bring that to you all, allow you to filter that and kind of decide what is best for Odessa when it comes to storage containers and how they should be regulated. So I put on here discussion only on the watermark because this is not anything official at all. This is just me kind of putting some thoughts together on what an ordinance could look like. But we can kind of go through here and anything you see as alarming or things that you want to add to, anything like that, we have the full ability to revise this. And then at our next meeting, I'll bring the draft of what we discussed tonight. And then we can approve that for your recommendation for the Board of Aldermen. So you guys are the filter of all ordinances that regard the zoning chapter. So this.
What do we characterize, how big is this storage?
This would be like shipping containers. So a lot of people use shipping containers. Commercial properties will use shipping containers to store or to temporarily move items. Residential, sometimes people will use shipping containers for if they've got, they're moving or they have whatever it is that they have in their home that they don't have enough room for within their home. They'll put it in their driveway and they'll have like a pod or whatever, which is fine. A lot of people have pods or need pods. It's whenever those pods are there for, beyond a, reasonable amount of time.
Yeah.
Then we need an ordinance that says you can have a pod, but you only need to have that pod there for a reasonable amount of time.
Have to permit them for those?
Well, I guess that's kind of what we need to decide within the ordinance. Do we need a
You keep
permit?
track of time.
Yeah, do we need a permit or do we just need something that says you can have it there for X amount of time? And then if it's there for beyond that amount of time, then that allows us to have our code enforcement and go and say, okay, you've had this here for 60 days. The code says 30 days, you need to move the pods.
My point would be as long as they enforce it. We have all kinds of things they don't enforce.
I understand that.
And you get on it. If we can have an ordinance, I'm for you, that and give them a time frame in and out, but if we ain't gonna enforce it,
Yeah.
too much different. But if they don't enforce it, yes, I agree.
I understand that, but it goes both ways though. So the way our code enforcement works is that it's complaint based or it's program based. So unless the city has created a program that says we're going to make sure we get all the storage containers that are out there, if we had an ordinance, then that's what we're gonna do. Or tall weeds and grass, that's a program that we actually do have. We'll do a code enforcement program for tall weeds and grass, and then code enforcement can go, enforce anyone who has grass taller than what our ordinance will allow. But if there's not a program for it, it has to come from a complaint.
So if we didn't have a tall weeds and grass program, then we would not be able to ticket someone unless someone called and said, my neighbor's grass is too tall. So that is how we do code enforcement now. The reason why we do that is because we only have a half of a code enforcement officer. Our current code enforcement officer spends half of their time doing code enforcement and half of their time doing animal control. If we had the ability to have more than a half of a code enforcement officer, we would be able to do more than complaint-based code
Would
enforcement.
be money and as far as ability.
Correct, 100%. But I'm just saying that's the reason why, but it's hard to, when people call and do complain about something, it's hard whenever we have to say, well, we actually don't even have the ability to enforce it because we don't even have an ordinance on it at all. That's why we're here today, because we're getting complaints on something that we don't have the ability to enforce because we don't even have an ordinance. So that's why we're here to try to clean up this storage container issue that.
Good idea, good idea.
Do we have an ordinance on trash containers?
Like dumpsters. We do have a dumpster and we have a dumpster enclosure ordinance.
We have the ability to enforce.
Well,
Like
I know
if you
it's- I
have
know it's right.
like a roll-off dumpster in your
Yeah,
driveway for an extended time.
would that be about the same thing or?
I
Be
don't
the
know.
same?
Jenny, can you look and see if we have anything on dumpsters? I'm not sure if we do. I know we have one on enclosures that says like if you have multifamily or commercial, you're technically required to have your dumpster, your permanent dumpster in an enclosure space. So it's not just out in the open. Obviously, there are some that are out in the open, but we technically do have an
If
ordinance.
you get a roll-off dumpster delivered. Let's just say AAA does it, there's like a time period.
Right.
Right.
And then you will get, you keep it, and if you keep past that, you're paying more.
Right, but
Yeah. But I'm not sure that there's an ordinance.
there's
that
not
way.
an ordinance. The city doesn't have anything
I
to
think
do
it's,
with
I think
it.
it's like 2 weeks, basically, or something like that.
But these storage pods are kind of different. You can keep them for quite a bit longer. People do. Okay. While we're looking at that, so this starts off with just the general purpose. The purpose of this section is to regulate the placement and use of shipping containers and portable storage containers in a manner that, one, allows reasonable business operations in commercial and industrial districts, protects adjacent residential neighborhoods from visual and operational impacts, establishes clear objective standards for duration, placement, and screening, and provides administrative flexibility through temporary use permits. Then we have a definitions section, so it defines what a portable storage container is. This is important for every ordinance that we write, is that we have a very clear definition of what we're trying to do and what each item means, where we get in trouble with ordinances. So portable storage container is a prefabricated container designed and used for the temporary storage of personal property or materials, typically delivered and removed by truck and not permanently affixed to the ground. Shipping or storage containers, a standardized metal freight container originally designed for transportation of goods and repurposed for accessory storage use on a property. So you get a lot of that where it is more of a permanent structure. It's not for temporary storage. It's for like an like a shed or like a garden shed or something like that. Temporary container placement of a portable or shipping container for a period not exceeding the time limits established in this section. And then accessory storage container use, the use of a shipping or storage container customarily incidental and subordinate to a permitted principal use on the same lot. So then we start out with, do you have any concerns with those definitions?
I have a couple.
Okay. I need
One, I don't think we're defining whether it's on wheels or not on wheels.
Okay,
And I definitely think that needs to be addressed, because if someone has it on wheels and it's like, oh, I moved it 10 feet.
okay.
You know,
Does it matter if it's on wheels?
I would think so, because it'd still be sitting on the property, because I mean, I think the debate right now is if I laid a pad of concrete in my yard and attached a storage shed, and it's, by this wording, it's permanently fixed, then it's permitted. But if it's not bolted to the ground, it's not permitted.
Well, this isn't necessarily saying it's permitted or not, it's just defining what we're talking about.
I know, but it says like a storage, if it's, what is it? It says somewhere about like how it's affixed to the ground or somewhere, maybe I read that further on down or further somewhere.
They talked about it non-permanently.
Yeah,
The first part of it.
Yeah.
Not permanently affixed to the ground.
so but if I did put a concrete pad and bolted it to the ground, then it's permanently affixed to the ground. So are we trying to say that I can't put that on my property or someone can put that on their property? I just feel like we need to be careful because if we're gonna write an ordinance that says we don't want these on people's properties, we need to be clear about what is allowed and what's not. Cause then
I'm
it's
not
just,
sure, but I think once you fix it to the ground, it becomes real property. It's an outbuilding then.
So the question is permanent versus not permanent.
yeah, cause it's still a storage unit or a storage shed. And then it's kind of like it falls with the wheels or not, like, is it just a shipping container that we're worried about, or is it the shipping container on wheels? Cause it's like, I know I've seen them in
Well, I
town,
think they're like, I guess I'm not an expert, I don't know how they actually operate and work. But I kind of picture it like a dumpster, like a roll-off dumpster, where the big roll-off dumpsters don't have wheels on them.
Yeah.
But you can pick them up and roll them
No,
off.
shipping containers don't.
I don't think
Yeah.
they do.
well,
They
you
can,
can get that,
they can be put on wheels.
that's what I'm saying, but
For, for transportation, or they could be on top of a flatbed trailer for transportation, but normally. Actual shipping containers don't have wheels attached.
but they can be put on wheels, so that's
Well,
the debate.
But I don't
But
think
I
there's,
don't know if they firmly
Well,
zone
I don't
because
think
they
they're
don't
sat
have
down.
a jack stand.
I think of like our yard waste containers at First Street. Like when they're sitting there just collecting yard waste, they're not on wheels. But when they pick them up to leave, they put them on
That's right.
wheels.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that's the thing about the trailer. You can put a trailer on your property if you pour concrete and sit on a
Yeah,
concrete,
like
but
the
you
house
can't back it
there.
in on grass.
Yeah.
That's,
I
they
think
don't enforce that either.
we'll
so.
address that. Let's
Yeah.
think through the next steps. Irregardless to,
Cause I'm just thinking what I'm seeing in town, is people using storage on wheels. That have been set up on property.
I think
So
that,
you're probably talking more of like a semi trailer.
Well, I mean, yeah, but I mean, you could still like. My uncle is hauled. You know, like they pull them off of like a cargo ship. They put them on wheels, you can leave them on wheels and park it. And
Yeah.
so,
But it's still just temporary.
but if they just set it there and leave it and walk away, that's what I'm kind of like saying, like, if we like just
I think-
leave it somewhere. I'm just trying to be,
we'll make sure that that's accounted for. But I think that's the problem. I think that's what we're trying to address, but we'll make sure that's accounted for, that there's a clause that says with or without portable wheels or something like that. Okay, general standards, so the way this is broken out is that it's gonna break down, it's gonna have a general that is for all districts, then it's gonna break it out for ag district, residential, commercial, industrial. And then it talks about the temporary use permit and the existing containers. So for the first one, containers shall not be used for dwellings or overnight accommodations unless approved as a lawful structure under the building code. Shall not obstruct required fire lanes, drive aisles, parking spaces, access points, utilities, drainage patterns, or required setbacks. Shall not be placed within public right of way. Any questions on those three? Before we get into the next one, because it's long. So, but the first one's basically saying you cannot live in there unless you go through the process and you say that you, like, you go through the proper building code process and make it an official home. And I don't believe that our code would allow you to do so, but anyway, so. So can't obstruct anything or obstruct public right of way. So then we go into, they shall not be used as a sign or sign structure, so. In reality, they make a pretty somewhat good billboard. But we wanna restrict that opportunity because we do have a pretty strict sign policy and sign ordinance. So I created a pretty detailed sign section here under number 4. So let me know if I've gone overboard, but here's what I have. No banners, draped sign, canvas sign, temporary sign, rigid sign, panel, wrap, vinyl graphic, painted message, or other advertising device shall be affixed, mounted, hung, attached, applied, or otherwise displayed on a storage container. Storage containers shall not be position oriented or maintained for the primary purpose of advertising or visibility from a public street or adjacent property. Storage containers shall not be used in a manner that would otherwise violate section 50-722, including but not limited to the placement or use of vehicles, trailers, or similar the equipment positioned for the primary purpose of acting as signs. If I remember right, set 50-722 is, a storage container shall be considered a permitted wall, facade, or building surface for purposes of calculating allowable sign area under this chapter. So basically, if you would have to go through the permitting requirements, which is the area requirements in our other sign sections. The only markings permitted on a storage container shall be original manufactured markings or identification of the business or container leasing company, provided such identification is limited to existing factory applied logos or lettering and does not exceed the maximum wall sign area permitted in the applicable zoning district. That's
5722, those prohibited signs.
Oh, yes, so prohibited sign says that you can't have obscene signs, signs that emit sound or smoke, portable signs other than an A-frame sign in the downtown district, inflatable signs, roof signs, so on and so forth. I reference that because of the portable signs from there.
So the signage, we've already got laws that cover some of the signage is what you're
Well,
saying.
we have a sign ordinance that says, like, it can only be so many.
Tall, so many square feet.
So, yeah, so many square feet of your building and things like that. And you have to get a permit, all signs have to be permitted, and we have a permitting process for that.
One question, so this is only residential period. Now, no commercial property is gonna be affected by it. I don't mean the signage at the storage building,
No,
It's not a
this
commercial
this section is only for signs on
but
storage.
I meant the whole thing,
containers.
the storage thing is only on commercial, on residential property. Now, like a lot of times when you do a big building, you'll have those storage equipment on there, like you're building a school or something like that, you'll have them sitting on that property. But this is only for residential.
No, this applies to all districts. This section I'm reading right now applies to all districts. There's a section for each. So right now, we're under general standards, all zoning districts.
Okay.
So there's a section for residential, a section for commercial, and a section for industrial. But this signage portion is for all of them, residential, commercial, or.
Very good.
And then, okay, so does anyone have any issues with this sign part, signage part?
I did look at the dumpsters and we don't have any codes.
Okay, nothing in our code for dumpsters or roll-off
Roll-off,
containers.
yep.
Okay. Containers must remain in good structural condition, free of rust, peeling, paint, and visual damage. And then containers placed on vacant lots are prohibited unless associated with an active permitted construction project or removed upon completion of the project unless otherwise permitted by this chapter. So I feel like that's what you're kind of talking about, like if there's a construction project going on, you're good to go until the project's done.
Great. That is, that's a good thing.
Then we have a section for agricultural districts, and I think that truthfully, this is one of the areas that we sometimes see. These shipping containers, because we have, obviously, there's ag areas that would be outside of our city limits. But we have a lot of ag that is in city limits that would fall under this code. That people use as kind of like just storage, because it's just a vacant lot in reality, they're not actively farming it, it's just kind of. They own this lot of land kind of on the outskirts of town type of situation, so. I think this one is relatively important on how we go about it, but my thought process with this section was to. Tie the shipping containers to actual ag usage, so. If you're utilizing the parcel for ag usage, then you can have containers on the lot.
How do we do that though? How can we,
Well,
how do we?
like if it's being farmed or if there's animals or crop or something like that on the ag lot, then there's a reason.
So if we say it's a agricultural.
Yeah.
Zone agricultural.
Yes, this would be based on the
Then if
zone.
they put a storage container on that piece of property. Somebody has to go out there and see if they're actually farming.
Well, I think, it would be pretty obvious if you're farming it or not.
You don't know. That's,
Well, let's read it first and then we'll decide.
okay, I'm just.
Just read it and then maybe, I don't know, you might be right. You might be right, might be. Okay, shipping and storage containers shall be permitted as accessory uses on agriculturally zoned property only when incidental to an active agricultural operation conducted on the same parcel. Containers shall be limited to 2 parcels limited to 2 per parcel unless additional containers are approved through administrative review. Not be located within required front yard setbacks. Maintained a minimum 50-foot setback from any residential zoning district boundary. Be used solely for agricultural storage purposes. Not be used as commercial warehousing, contractor storage yards, or non-agricultural business operations. And then storage containers are prohibited on vacant agricultural parcels not actively used as agricultural production. But to your point, I'm a farm kid, so to me, if you've got tractors out there and you're harvesting, that's agricultural production.
But like this point, though, what if it's in the winter, like early spring, and they're putting seed storage and.
That's what I'm saying, you
Yeah.
could tell though that parcel's has agricultural production, it's not just a vacant grass lot.
Oh.
That's what I'm. Cause we do have parcels that are zoned ag that have no agricultural use. Like they're not, it's just grass and they store things. Does this need revised in any way?
I think so.
Is the two, we can adjust the 2, the setback, whatever you guys think, this is not my ordinance, this is your ordinance.
But you wrote it.
I drafted it.
Oh. Oh, I'm not trying to be a pain in the ass,
No, no,
but,
no.
You know, it's, you know, if you have to have so much property in the county to have horses, guessing. But you don't have to have horses. You know, seems like if I bought some property and I wanted to put a storage unit on it, I should be able to put a storage unit on it. I shouldn't have to get permission from somebody to find out what I can store in there. That would be the only thing is, you know, we only have half a day, you know, for somebody to go look at this stuff. And it just sounds to me like it'd just be more of a, when somebody calls us, it's, they've got a storage unit over there and I need somebody to go over and look to see what they're storing in there. I don't know, it'd just be hard. These meetings would get a lot longer. I think.
Well, the first number or letter A is saying that it's basically saying you can have containers if you're using your ag zoned parcel for ag use. But if you have a vacant ag parcel, you can't have containers. And I think that's what I'm trying to get to, is that if you just have a vacant lot that you're not actually using as ag, you just have this lot, we don't want that lot to end up just being a place that you store your junk that you don't want at your house anymore. So that's the goal of what we're trying to achieve here. I get what you're saying, like especially with number B5, like we've got to do some investigation to figure out what the heck you're using this storage unit for, and they're not gonna be like, here, look inside, what's inside this storage unit. I get that, and that number 5, that doesn't make any sense for us to be able, makes a tough job for our code enforcement to be able to try to figure out what they're actually using the storage unit for, and that part is probably irrelevant. But the point is whether or not the storage units should or should not be there on the parcel. So I think A at minimum is what the gist of what we're just trying to get to. And then the second most important item on here is B3 to me, is that if you do have ag, we don't want it right next to someone's backyard that could be abutting this vacant ag lot.
I mean, I think the other thing that I would think about too is how they're positioned on the property. So if it is, kind of like I brought up earlier, if it's on a concrete pad or something, is it a shed or is it what I feel like you're talking about, just we parked this here with grandma's furniture that we don't want to deal with, and we're gonna leave it sitting there for 20 years. Again,
But you have, your property is kind of the prime situation because your property really does abut.
Yeah.
Ag properties that, I don't know if they're farmed or not now, but they hypothetically
Only one side.
could be ag zoned.
Yeah.
That aren't necessarily farmed, that could end up being someone's like.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
So like, I think that's, cause I get what you're saying 100%, like, you know, I think that goes back to mine, like, I have 3 acres. You know, and on one side of me, they do hay. You know, and then the other 2 sides, nothing's done there. It's very peaceful up there, so to say. But I think what you're saying is like, you know, you shouldn't stop someone from putting that there. I agree with you. I also see this point of, I don't want grandma's furniture just sitting there in a shipping container for 20 years. And then that shipping container rusting. So I think it's, the debate is how it's maybe put there, like if it's a, you know, like if it was someone's coming and going and farming, then I think it would be okay. But if like it's just sitting there to rust and becoming a shipping container graveyard, I think is what we're trying to prevent, right?
Right.
So,
Well, I agree. I think that but I think it probably should apply to all of them. The 50-foot setback. I wouldn't look at some of that up on the hill, but it's, you know, it's not ag anymore. But we have a lot of, I'm sure we have shipping containers. I know there's one in my neighborhood.
So let's see, how do we, how do I address residential buffers? So in commercial, we have a screening buffer section.
I mean, would it fall into our own code though, that like, you can't have something so close to other, like the property line, cause I know whenever the chicken ordinance came about. There was the big thing, it couldn't be so close to someone else's property, so couldn't we just add that kind of like. You know, wording either into this or, you know, please see this other code of how close your storage unit could be to
The required
that.
setbacks.
You know,
The required setbacks are gonna be less than this.
Yeah.
So like, for a basic residential line, like your rear setback's only gonna be probably like 10 foot from the rear setback line. Where this is gonna call out 50, so. Do we want it more, do we want the same, this is the question. There are buffer zones for the commercial section and for the industrial section, but they are treated differently for the ag section or ag zone.
I think this sounds good.
I think,
It's covering it the best you can cover it. You can't control what people do all the time.
I agree that we could be less restrictive for ag. And we could, I think we take out B5 for sure. Because we don't know what's in there.
Why would you take out 5? Evil.
B5, the one that says, that they can't be used for commercial warehousing, contractor storage yards, or non-agricultural business operations. Because to Steve's point is that we can't really enforce what they're doing inside of that.
It doesn't hurt to have it there,
Yeah.
just so they know you're not supposed to do that. You can't
That's fair.
control what they're gonna do, but at least you're saying, that's not what this is for.
That's true.
Sean, hi. Sure. Also 4 says that it's only used for agricultural storage purposes. So just keeping 4 instead of 5, I think makes it a little bit easier for the city to enforce rather than saying you are using it for commercial warehousing or contractor storage yards. We only have to say you are using it for a non-agricultural storage purpose. Makes it a little easier.
Is the 2, are you guys comfortable with the number of quantity? Or is that too restrictive?
I'm guessing that
It says you can go and get approval for another storage, so I mean,
It does.
fine.
I also just asked ChatGPT, because it's my best friend. About, are we also going to limit the length? Cause ChatGPT just told me that there's. You know. 20 foot long and 40 foot, so like. You know, are we going to say you can have 2 40 feet, or can you have 4 20 feet? You know? Because then technically, I mean, they could put 2 20 foot butt to butt, and then like they have 4, but then technically in the. Just curious.
But this talks about the containers, so 2 containers. And they can choose if they want 20 or 40. If they want 3 20s, then that's over the limit, they'd have to ask for special consideration.
I know, but are we trying to limit? I mean, I guess the question is, do we want to? Like, is that something we wanna say? You
I
know,
would have,
like, have the link, you know what I'm saying?
I mean, because if you don't limit it, where do you stop?
Well, no, I'm talking about just, like, are we okay with 2 20 foot, or are we okay with 2 40 foot?
Like this could read as be limited to 2 up to 40 foot. Storage containers per
I
parcel.
don't think they can be any bigger than that, but
No, I just meant like, but like, you know, do we want, you know, do we wanna put that wording somewhere?
Or leave it open.
if you, I know you're good at going to other communities and asking them what their
No, I just went with it. I didn't do any others, community research.
Okay, I figured you did, so I'm sure other communities are having the same issues because I don't want to see it. I don't want to see.
Yeah.
Really.
No, I don't need, yeah, like, no, for them.
Well. I don't know. We'll think on that one and we can question it. Come back to it. Want to try to get through a few more before we go to our training. Okay, section 5 residential district. So this one we really, I know we have some in residential. We speak. So. There says shipping / storage containers are prohibited as accessory structures in residential zoning districts. So this is like. You're gonna put it in your backyard like a shed. That's accessory structure. Portable storage containers may be permitted for temporary use, subject to a maximum duration of 30 days within a 6-month period. Placement on a driveway or approved hard surface only. 1 container per lot. And then administrative approval by the zoning administrator. And then extensions may be granted once for an additional 30 days upon showing of a good cause.
Going to that driveway is concrete driveway, right?
Yes.
Which makes them make, yeah, okay, well, it's all concrete, yeah.
Now I have questions about this, and so portable storage, now this says containers. We're not talking about storage, portable storage units like you buy at a lumber yard that you can put your lawnmower in and your gardening tools and all that stuff. Because those, I mean, those are portable buildings.
Like a plastic shed,
Yeah,
those little plastic sheds. No, this would be, when it references portable storage container, it would be defined as prefabricated container designed and used for a temporary storage of personal property or material typically delivered and removed by truck and not permanently affixed to the ground.
okay, so there's a lot of storage sheds that are not permanently fixed to the ground. That's what I'm saying is that,
Yeah,
I mean, and that,
One's a shed, one.
I'm not
Has a
seeing-
roof and one is just flat usually. I mean,
Can we
one-
put that in the
backs of semis and
definition?
cars.
we could put it in the definition that it excludes like
Storage sheds.
storage sheds, yeah.
yeah.
We can say that in the definition, we can say
I mean,
excludes storage sheds.
I guess I don't know what these look like, because when I'm thinking of portable, storage container, I've not seen a portable storage container.
This is like,
Have you ever seen the shipyards where they're lifting the big containers in the big shipyards?
Sure.
Gonna-
Those are big storage containers, those aren't,
the pods, yeah. Like the
yeah, that's
pods.
shipping containers.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about,
But that's different than portable storage container.
but that's what we're talking about here.
We're talking about
People
something
are
probably
using
20 foot
these
long,
as-
80 foot long,
And since
so
they're also,
12 foot tall.
like
Yeah.
the moving company. pods,
Yeah, now those, if it's like a pod, I understand that.
Yep, that's what we're talking
Okay,
But
so
they're
that's,
essentially the same.
those are, yeah, the same, they're made the same.
about, the metal ones.
What about a,
And normally those aren't like pod, I know, they don't leave those there for very long,
It's kind of like the dumpster.
because they want to charge you the storage fee someplace else, and they don't want their property, their container just sitting there.
what about,
Try not to name names or locations.
Yeah, whatever those things are, or these devices, whatever.
enclosed trailers? What's the difference?
It's the same thing, like a
So we're
truck,
talking,
semi truck trailer.
you know, something you pull behind a pickup truck.
Yeah,
Oh, on weight.
They're all over town.
But I think those would have like, you would probably have like a permanent license plate.
Yeah, that'd be like a vehicle that'd be licensed and registered,
right.
Okay.
which there's a whole section of that. in.
Okay.
Not included here.
Yeah.
I do have one suggestion,
Mhm.
the 30 days to 60 days.
Mhm.
And then I just realized that, I know we're not trying to name names, but we might have actually just created an issue. Because if somebody is using that company that picks up your stuff and moves it, it has the company logo on it.
Mhm.
So,
Which that's allowed.
Okay.
But you can have the company logo.
okay, cause I was just worried that like that was gonna conflict, but I would suggest just changing that to 60 days. The only reason I bring that up is my parents. Who live in Nixa are getting ready to move to Florida.
Mhm.
And they're having one delivered, but they were waiting to have their house moved for their house to sell, and if it takes 30 days to sell the house. You know, and they need to pack prior to moving, like that could be 60 days before that could be shipped. So I would just allow someone 60 days for the.
Any thoughts on that?
It says extensions can be granted, so if it goes over 30 days.
Yeah, I think that would cover that. They just have to come and extend it.
But I feel like that's just unreasonable process for someone to have to go be like, oh, hey, I'm moving.
It was
What if we
always
met
so
in the
good.
middle and did 45 days?
I could agree to 45. I'm just thinking a closing period is 30 days on a house, so.
Thoughts on 45 days?
Would you say to build a house? Is that what you said?
No, to sell a house.
Sell a house.
So if you're selling a house, you have 30 days past the day that you sign to vacate, but you would need. You know, like if you started packing your stuff and selling it, like, or putting it into a storage container that, you know, they deliver for you to move. You could do that 30 days prior to the house.
Yeah, I get, yeah.
And then we'll keep the extension at an additional 30. Okay. Moving on, I'm trying to get through so we can bring you a draft next time. Commercial districts, shipping storage containers are permitted as accessory uses in commercial zoning districts, subject to the following. Maximum of 2 containers per lot unless approved through an administrative site plan review. Placement must be located behind the principal structure when feasible. Shall not be located within required front yard setbacks. Minimum setbacks of 10 feet from any residential zoning, so that's up for debate. And then screening where a container is visible from adjacent residential property of public street. Screening shall be required, which may include solid fencing, a minimum of 6 feet in height, evergreen landscaping, or a combination of berm and landscaping. And the duration, kind of containers used for seasonal or overflow storage exceeding 90 consecutive days shall require administrative approval. Thoughts? The 10 feet to our points earlier, for ag, we said 50 feet away from residential, and now we're saying 10 feet. The difference is ag, I picture more on the outskirts of town. Commercial was gonna be, there could be commercial in the middle of town. That's the biggest difference I see here, but. You know,
Yeah, but we're also saying that they have a fence around it.
that's true. That's true. 10 feet with the fence, that's true. Okay, any objections? Or concerns? All right, moving on. I still make sure. Okay, industrial districts. Shipping containers are permitted as accessory uses, blah, blah, blah. No numeric limit. Provided the containers comply with fire and building safety requirements and do not encroach into required setbacks. Where an industrial property abuts a residential district, containers shall maintain a minimum 25-foot setback from the shared property line, and screening consistent with section 5C shall be required. Uh-oh, what's 5C?
That was those fences on the last one. Or no, that was.
No,
No,
Maybe
that
that was
was
supposed to be 6 feet.
I think it's 6 feet.
you meant 6 feet.
6 feet,
Yeah,
yeah.
I thought that's where we read it.
Knew it was wrong.
Okay. Stacking of containers shall not exceed 2 containers in height unless approved through a site plan. I almost think commercial should say either that same thing or no stacking.
Now, is there a reason to,
Nope.
I don't know, double
In my
stack?
brain.
That's what they're made for, to be able to stack.
Right, but
They're gonna, yeah.
But
Is there a
with
reason
commercial districts, you can kind of get into places where you don't necessarily want that
Yeah, think
site.
of like
because they're
gas
higher, they're gonna be the
stations
size of the
Yeah.
building,
It makes it possibly more unsightly.
yeah.
So should we
I
say
think so.
no,
Fence is a good
no
idea.
stacking in commercial?
Or do we need to bring it down from C1 to C3?
well, we don't really want them stacked anywhere, do we?
Well, I'm just
Yeah,
thinking like
that's true.
temporarily, like if it's a C3, like. Yes. I don't know, I'm just trying to think like, I don't wanna ever limit somebody to like not being able to for a short period, but I don't really want them that period, but you know what I mean, like.
I can see it in industrial areas, but I can't.
I can see stacking in industrial, but not commercial.
And then do we need to have that agricultural too?
No stacking in commercial
No, agricultural.
or no stacking in agricultural or commercial.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's.
I can't see that happening very often. Because if you want access to
You have to have.
that.
Put some specialized equipment to stack them.
Yeah, I just mean like, that's what it means, like, do we wanna tell them like, you can't do it? Cause like, I feel like if we say we don't put it there, someone might be like, it's not there, so like, I'm gonna do it.
if they only got 2, they're probably not gonna stack them anyway, I wouldn't think on agriculture.
Yeah, but anybody's gonna have 2 of them, gonna have the capacity to move it, to do what he wants to do. He's gonna have a crane or a boom or a big forklift, he's gonna pick that sucker up. Set it on
We
top.
also have one more section, 2 more sections technically.
Okay.
So we also have the transition overlay district.
I'll be honest, the transition overlay district, it's like often la la land back here. It's like its own little world, but I keep telling myself like, okay, it exists, you have to use it. So here's a section dedicated to it. So the point of the transition overlay district, and I actually had a question for Lindsay, I'm not gonna put her on the spot, but my question is that, for the overlay district, if you were going to utilize the overlay district, would you rezone to it, or does it naturally all apply to everywhere?
Oh, so yes, for an overlay, you would technically rezone to the overlay, but because it's an overlay, you're keeping your underlying zoning. So it's less of a rezone and more of a additional zone. So then your underlying district regulations would still apply, but then you also now have these overlay
Cause
requirements.
the way our transition overlay, it basically is saying you have to do this or that if you're.
So close to another,
So I've struggled to understand when it's applicable, when we need to start, when it's triggered, right? Either way, that's besides the point. I created a section that would utilize this for storage containers. Anyway, storage containers shall not be placed between a principal building and a residential zone property. Enhanced screening shall be required when visible from residential districts. The Planning and Zoning Commission may impose additional buffering requirements during site plan review to mitigate visual impacts. So this is if the district overlay is applying to the parcel, right? Lindsay? Like these 3 things would only apply if that overlay is in effect.
correct.
It's complicated.
What's an overlay? What are we, definition?
Sure. So it commonly happens, I'm trying to think of okay, so we had the PUD ordinance, right? That required people to rezone to PUD. We could have had it been an overlay district, and I'm sorry, was it, it isn't, it's not an overlay, okay, I didn't think so. So if you had a PUD overlay, you have the options then to use all of those PUD availabilities. But you still can have your underlying zone applied to it. It also might happen, like, for example, you might have a historic district overlay. So you have it on a particular area of properties. We still have our regular commercial regulations there, but because it's in this historic district, it might be required to go through historic preservation committee review or something like that.
Like we could do one for downtown.
Yes, and then they would still have their downtown regular commercial
Like
zoning
C1.
requirements. Yes,
They would all be C1, but they have another layer of special requirements that they have to do because they're in this historic downtown overlay district.
it's kind of a way of saying these special regulations apply to you guys, but all of these other ones do too. We're just giving you a little bit more regulations, but usually they're to help and support the zoning.
And
Does that make
then in
sense?
our code of ordinance, so it says we have where we have residential 1, 2, 3, C1, C2, C3, I1, I2, and then we have this commercial transition district, overlay district 2. That it's just there.
Okay.
And it-
Do we have any of those?
well, that's the problem.
Okay,
I think you might have a little bit of insight into it. I think like Casey's,
Yeah, Second Street, isn't that?
is it all of Second Street or
Up
is
to
it
Orchard?
Second, is it? Orchard, like,
So just,
Concordia
I think
Bank.
it's just past the bank or
yeah,
something.
like the,
Yeah.
yes, the bank and Casey's. Because those are two commercial properties that are really in a residential area. So that district was created to help them transition, so they weren't so bluntly a gas station and a bank in a residential neighborhood.
They stopped it at Orchard, I'm pretty sure.
This is something we'll research, it's on our to-do list. So, anyway, I didn't wanna abandon it, and not include it in this new ordinance, so it's there. Anyway, moving on, there's a little section for temporary use that just explains, if you were to get a temporary container permit, what you would have to abide by. And when you need to get that, so for construction projects, seasonal inventory or emergency situations. And then for existing containers, so the biggest question I needed to figure out how to put into this ordinance is. We're creating this ordinance because we have an issue, where we're getting complaints, we're getting calls because there's people with storage containers and we don't have the ability to discuss it with the people who have the storage containers. So I needed to consider and think through how we wrote this ordinance, because a lot of times ordinances are written in a way that says anything before this ordinance doesn't matter, it's non-conforming. But we didn't want to do that because then that means anybody who has a storage container as of today can keep that storage container forever and ever and ever.
So it's not grandfathered in.
Yeah, the grandfather, non-conforming basically means grandfathered in. We didn't want to write in a grandfathered in clause for storage containers. So I wrote it as existing containers, any storage container lawfully in existence on the effective date of this container shall be brought into compliance with all applicable provisions of this chapter within 180 days. The zoning administrator may grant one administrative extension not exceeding 90 days upon written request demonstrating good cause, and failure to comply within the prescribed time shall constitute a violation subject to enforcement under this code. That
What about
was-
the guy said they can't afford to move? But you'd have to have a big truck, big rollback, to get in there, get it out of there.
Well, so one thing with code enforcement and the way our code enforcement works is they try to work with, whatever the case is, they try to work on a compliance basis. They try to, they never try to like lay the hammer down, even though this says 180 days. If that person has a reason and they say, I contacted these people. They told me they'd get back to me and they didn't get back to me or whatever. As long as you're making a conscious effort or I've been saving money and I'm almost there, that kind of thing. They're not gonna like ticket you because you don't have it that minute, but it is a requirement. If it's a requirement, it's a requirement. There has to be a line drawn somewhere.
Very good, very good.
Okay, any questions, comments, concerns? We're 11 minutes behind schedule now. Okay, so I will put together a draft ordinance that's like a real ordinance and then bring that to you guys at our next meeting. I also want to do this same thing. I know we still have zoning conversations to have, but I also would like to have a similar conversation about parking. So we talked about that. I didn't forget. This just kind of came up as the complaints were coming in, so. Parking will be on our next conversation. We'll,
I mean, residential,
all of it. We need to talk about all parking.
good.
We need to talk about commercial parking. We keep seeing stuff come up with the way our commercial parking requirements are, where variances are needed almost every time a commercial building is built, so we need to have that discussion too. So. Okay,
One of the things you put on your list for me,
sure.
I don't know what we're calling it, the plan, the Odessa plan, that's. been put-
Comprehensive plan.
The comprehensive plan, yes, I
Okay, so
don't have any clue.
at a really high level conversation. So we are trying to put a UDO, a Unified Development Ordinance, or UDO or UDC, depends on what we want to call it. Unified Development Ordinance or Unified Development Code. So right now we have chapter 10, that's our building code, chapter 50 is our zoning code. They're clunky, that's why we have to have these conversations with you guys, that's why we have to go through and talk about parking specifically, and then we have to talk about driveways, and we have to talk about each of these things and, pass them ordinance by ordinance, because it makes it very difficult for us to be able to just approve things because our ordinance is very dated. So we are trying to put into the budget a project that would help us improve our ordinance as one giant project. You guys would be involved in it, but we have funding in the budget for this upcoming year to use our reserves to pay to have that done by a company to come in and help us do that. We feel that the comprehensive plan is very important, but we do have one, though it be very outdated, our codes are more detrimental to the way we operate than our comprehensive plan being outdated. So we want to, in this upcoming year, that starts April 1st, so we're only 2 months away from getting that project started. We want to get our codes fixed first, and then April 2027, we'd like to start our comprehensive plan project.
And somebody to enforce it. I don't mean to be a butt, but I mean, if you don't have anybody to enforce me, just said the person works a half day, one thing a half day and the other, so you're gonna have to have somebody full time. Because you write all these codes, we're gonna have to have somebody working on it all the time.
Sure.
Right, very good.
We would love that. Okay, I will let you guys adjourn.
Next meeting, regular meeting, planning and zoning is March 19th, 2026. And, can I get a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
And a second?
Second.
There's no discussion. All in favor?